evening. My name is Dr. Leslie Van Rober. For those of you that don't know me, welcome. Thank you so much for coming. You're all really busy people, and it's hard to fit an extra thing into our lives, isn't it? Especially in the evening when we're all ready to hunker in. I so appreciate you being here, and really, if it weren't for you, I wouldn't be here. I mean, you really do make my work and the time and the effort that I put into these and all my work really worthwhile. So if I can do for you, help you open up doors of awareness, because a lot of times we don't get them anywhere else, then I feel like I've done my job. I mean, we're really here, aren't we, to help each other. It's not me just giving you information, it's you also giving back to me. So we're really here to do what? To call forth the greatness in each other. And that's why I do these month after month. And this is our 8th presentation in 2009. It's called Osteoporosis, the Bone-Chilling Truth. So we've already given several different presentations. Anybody in here, anybody in here been to most of the presentations? Yeah, several of you, thank you. But isn't it true for those that you have been before, isn't it true that one presentation builds on another presentation, builds on another presentation, builds on another presentation? And you think if you've heard it once, you've heard it. If you have a brain like me, I say I have 2 brain cells. And I'm serious. Information in one brain cell and information out the other brain cell. So it's really important that we hear things over and over and over again, and I update and read and rework and try to give out the information so that it comes in a simple form so that you can take it in and understand it. Tonight I did something a little bit different. You'll see you have 2 handouts. One is, well, both are for you to take home, but get the yellow one out. That's it. And I want you actually put your, if you don't have a pen, then borrow one, or you can get one later. Put your names on the top of these. These are yours. That's your secret information. You can't give it to anybody else. But you're welcome to pick up another one for somebody else if you like on the way out. In fact, do that. I'm sure there's people out there that need and would like this information. But we're going to, I decided with osteoporosis especially because it's such a complicated subject, to write out a lot of the stuff, and then you can bring it home and look at it, so you don't have to depend on your 2 brain cells to remember everything. So you don't even really have to take notes. All you have to do is listen and just try to take in the information. And when they say you hear something for the first time, we only retain maybe 6 or 7% if we're lucky, and I think that's really true. I mean, it is for myself. So when you go home, because it takes us a lot of effort and energy and team power, it takes us actually a week to prepare for each presentation, not counting my preparation. I'm talking about the office and the team and what we have to do to get together. So I'm saying that so you feel a little bit of pang of guilt. So don't throw them away. Read them, because this is how you make good choices. You make good choices by building up information. And so this is just to add to your arsenal of information. The reason why we want information is because when information from the outside comes at you, and it does, doesn't it? You get information from the media, you get information from newspapers, you get information from doctors, you get information from your friends, you get information from what your mothers used to say, you get information from your children. We don't know what to believe. It's just so confusing. So we end up believing what we've always believed. So it's really hard to what? To become really aware of the facts and what's really going on, because we've been conditioned a certain way, especially about osteoporosis, because that goes way back to the root. And what's our root? Milk. So that's kind of what we are talking about. So the more information you build up in yourself, then when information comes at you, without being judgmental of other people, all you can say is, no, that doesn't make sense to me. No, that doesn't make sense to me, and you throw it out. Oh yeah, that makes sense to me. And then you build it up in your arsenal of information. That's why these presentations are so important. Our next one is on exercise, per se. And it may be, we're not quite sure, but they assure me it's supposed to be ready. It may be in the, you know, the Theater Arts Center that they're refurbishing, because it has more space. And that's right across the street from my office on Squim Avenue. But I don't know for sure. We'll let you know as we call you. So that'd be fun, because it seats like 125 people or something like that. They have 2 rooms, actually. So we'll let you know about that. Don't have my hopes up, but they assure me it's going to be ready. So we'll see. So that'll be really fun. So let's get going. Let's look at your yellow sheet. And these basically are the answers to 3 questions about calcium. Yes, we do need calcium. That's a no-brainer. No, due to the fat, cholesterol, milk sugar, and milk protein, dairy products are not our best sources of calcium. We were trained differently, weren't we? I mean, I literally remember thinking when I was a little girl, I always hated milk. The reason why I hated it, I'm sure, is because I was highly allergic to it, even though I didn't know it at the time. Because I was born stuffed up, and I remained stuffed up until I decided one day to quit eating the dairy products. And all of a sudden, my sinuses were cleared up, and I wasn't stuffed up anymore. And I also had really bad stomach aches, not ever relating it to milk. But I remember when I was little girl, thinking, it really makes sense to me that we need to drink milk and we need to eat our dairy products for strong bones and teeth, because isn't that what we were trained? For strong bones and teeth. Listen to my little girl logic. Because it's white. That's what I used to think when I was a little girl. I go, oh, that makes sense. My teeth are white. Our bones aren't really, really white, but we think they are as a little person. And so I guess this is probably good for them because they're white. I mean, that's how illogical sometimes we are. And then we keep that conditioning, because we're so highly conditioned to believe that. We keep that conditioning. It's really hard to jump out of that groove, out of that conditioning. But we have we have created over the years all kinds of tools for you to refer back to. So you don't have to depend on your 2 brain cells. Just get the tools. It's all in my book. It's in the workbook. It's in handouts. You can get on the website. You can come into my office. We have lots of other support materials. You can come and talk to me. We have a support group during the week. We have all kinds of support now, so that if you really want to, you can really expand your own brains and open up those doors of awareness one at a time. Number 3, yes. Fresh, whole fruits and vegetables with whole grains and beans to boot are our ideal sources of calcium. I mean, that's the way it is. So here we go. This is a myth. What does a myth mean? Myth means that it's not true. So don't get confused that it's true. This is a myth. It's not true. Milk does a body good. Isn't that what we were trained from the time we were really little? I mean, we're connected to milk like we're connected to our mamas. And it's really hard when you start rattling the milk cage, because we're so emotionally attached to milk and to cheese and to dairy products that it's really difficult to think, well, maybe milk isn't our best source of calcium after all. It's almost sacrilegious. It's almost anti-American when we think about it. So just keep your minds open. I'm not going to make your mind up for you. But just get the information in, and whatever makes sense to you, then you keep. Whatever doesn't make sense to you, you're not going to keep anyway. So don't try to hang on to it. But just keep your minds open and try to get the information and collect the information in here. What were the milk slogans that we all know? This one? Yeah. Oh, yeah, the got milk. Nature's milk is nature's perfect food. Milk needed for strong bones and teeth. Milk is a natural. You never outgrow your need for milk. They also had a campaign where they said, if you drink milk, you'll lose weight. They had to pull that campaign because it's absolutely not true. They don't have proof, but it's also not true. So they can put anything they want out there. They might have to pull it later down the line, but does that matter? No, it's already in our brains. And of course, the most successful campaign of all was what? You just said it. Got milk. And it has been running. It has been running since 1996. You know, a big industry like that is not going to run one campaign unless it's successful. It is truly successful. And I don't collect all these that I see, but all the stars, got milk, Pamela June. Star, got milk. Like, we're going to look like that woman, right?
Margaret. And Margaret?
Yeah. I don't know. Is that who it is? I don't know who it is. Got milk. Here are all the athlete superstars. I'm not going to take that out. Here's, not this one. Here's another one. Got milk. Yeah. Here's another one. Phil. Yeah. Got milk. Got milk. But I don't know who they all are. Oh, that's Steve, somebody, another. He's a football player. Whatever his name is, I don't know. Here's another one. Here's a rookie of the year. This is a couple NBA. You got milk. And here's one. Here's when they were saying lose weight with milk. Here you are. No wonder we're so brainwashed. Do you know how much an ad in USA Today is? I have no idea, but a full-page ad like this, probably $500,000. I mean, I don't know for sure, but it's got to be a lot. Here's another star. Got milk. And this is the last one I pulled out, which is just a couple weeks ago in USA Today. All these kids with got milk mustaches. Do you see the images? So no wonder it's so hard for us to jump out of, to wean ourselves from milk. And why would it be so hard to wean ourselves from cow's milk? Were we really designed to drink cow's milk? You know, I really don't think so. But we're conditioned in our brains that that's what we're supposed to drink. And the reason why now we're so concerned about it is why? Because we're worried about the health of our bones. We're worried about osteoporosis. So the bottom line is first we're conditioned and we're emotionally attached. And now the bottom line is what? We're worried about osteoporosis. So milk has these things. Milk has fat in it, and by the way, don't look now, but it is in your handout. So milk has, not the yellow handout, but the other handout, so you'll see it. Milk has fat, cholesterol, milk sugar, and milk protein. I have this, all this information is in here on the chapter called Dairy's Dirty Underpants. The editor said to change the name, and I said no. So it's all your information. It's right in here. You don't have to go to all the other books. I think you should, so that you get the information. But in here, it's really simple. Because I like simple. That's how I think. 2 brain cells. So fat milk has fat in it. Even skim milk has fat in it. Whole milk is 3%. Whole milk, 3% milk is 50% fat. And then 2% milk is what? 35% fat. 1% milk is 25% fat, 25% fat, and skim milk is 4 to 7% fat. What do we need that fat for? We don't need fat to add to our fat. We don't need fat to clog up our arteries and our veins. Milk has a lot of cholesterol in it. Animal products all have cholesterol in it. On one hand, we're taking cholesterol medication in the morning. On the other hand, we still are drinking cholesterol or eating cholesterol. Does that make sense? Well, that is the American way, though, isn't it? We don't have to change our habits if we take a pill in order to counteract our habits, like a pill is really going to counteract those bad habits. I don't think so. Milk also has milk sugar. 70% of the world, they estimate, is allergic to milk sugar, myself included. And that's where you get digestive problems and stomach aches. 70% of the world. So you can imagine how many of us are probably allergic to the milk sugar. That doesn't count the milk protein. The milk protein causes a lot of little problems, like getting stuffed up in your sinuses and bronchitis and colds and asthma and skin conditions like eczema and psoriasis and bedwetting for children and just such a variety of little things, but they're really not little things. But it also causes big problems. It is related, the milk protein is related to heart disease, to kidney inflammation, to artery inflammation, inflammation of the arteries that leads to what? Sick arteries, anemia, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, and also type 1 diabetes. We won't go into those. We go into those another time, but not tonight. But just to give you an idea, I just want you to throw it away. Just throw it away. There are other, if you attach to it, try rice or soy or almond milk. But I would get away from the milk. But the milk is not so bad for most people. What's the hardest thing? Cheese. Cheeseaholic. Cheeseaholic, right here. So I just make sure, Sheila says I miss it. Let's not start talking about it. So I make sure cheese is not around me because you never know when your mouth's going to open up and the cheese is just going to hop in. So it's way better not to have it in your house. Also, milk has a lot of different contaminants in it, pesticides, and AIDS and leukemia. These are the things that come from the dairy herds. Hormones, of course, and antibiotics. We think we need to drink milk and eat dairy products because we believe this myth. Most of us think that osteoporosis, is this not right? That osteoporosis is caused by not getting enough calcium. Isn't that right? Mm-hmm. That's what we think. Let's go to our little handout, the yellow one. Okay, let's look at this. What is osteoporosis? So look at that as I talk about it. In the U.S., the key to calcium balance in the body is not calcium intake. It's not because of not getting enough calcium. The American diet provides more than enough calcium. It's staying away from the foods and substances that leach the calcium out of your body. According to John McDougall, MD, I have his book here. No, I don't have it here. I didn't bring it with me. There is no, in the medical literature, there's no such thing as a calcium deficiency disease. That's a powerful statement, isn't it? There is no such thing as a calcium deficiency disease. Then what is osteoporosis? Because that's what we're taught. We're taught that in our health physicians' offices. We're taught by the government agencies. It's just general knowledge and fact, we think, in this country. So what is it caused by? The real concern behind your calcium question is not caused by calcium deficiency or not taking enough calcium as commonly thought. It is caused by a calcium imbalance when too much calcium is being leached out of your bones by what you consume. So it's because of what we've been consuming all of our lives, ever since we were little, up till now, that leaches calcium out of our bones. That's what osteoporosis is all about. By the time a woman is in her mid-30s, women, long past for most of us, by the time we're in our mid-30s, the stage is set whether you are going to get osteoporosis or not. For a man, it's in their 40s. So that means your body, your bones have been dissolving literally since this time and before, and it starts when we were 30 years old. Like a lot of chronic degenerative diseases, though, it's not picked up, is it? Until our bones are, what? Dissolved. Dissolved. So therefore, we can't stay stuck in what we did wrong. You know, it would be so easy to stay stuck in what we did wrong. We can't stay stuck there. I mean, that's then. We can't change that. But we can change certain things now. And that's what we really need to work at. So I want to show you this. Everybody think, oh, not everybody, but most people think that bones are kind of solid like a piece of wood. Bones are not solid like a piece of wood. They're living organisms, and they're pliable, and they also have holes in them. So can you see that? This is a bone sample of what a healthy bone looks like. So it has holes in it. And I'll pass this around when we're done so you can really look at it closely. So on the round side is a healthy bone. That's what it's supposed to look like. On the flat side, look at the holes get bigger. That is osteoporosis. The holes get bigger. Now, without reading any medical journals, without going to talk to your physician, just think for yourself in your own guts. Do you think taking a drug is going to fill in those big holes? I don't think so. I don't think so. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just saying think about it. And think about long-term effects that they don't even know what the long-term effects are of the drugs they're suggesting for osteoporosis. Because they don't have any long-term studies, because they haven't been out long enough. You know, HRT was the same way. HRT, hormone replacement therapy, was the same way. The physicians knew for as long as it had been out that it did have something to do with a hormonally driven Cancers like breast cancer. I knew that early in my practice. I've been practicing 30 years now, but early in my practice, I have women come in way back 30 years ago, and as soon as they were diagnosed as having breast cancer, what did their physicians do? They took them off of the hormone replacement therapy. Now, years and years ago, that was telltale to me. Whoa, what is that all about that they do that? Now it's taken how many years? It took over 50 years, more than that, over 50 years to discover that, yes, indeed, we have proof now that we have killed a lot of women inadvertently by giving them hormone replacement therapy. And women, we have to take responsibility for taking it ourselves. It's not someone gives it to us, it's we decide to take it ourselves. Well, what about these osteoporosis drugs? I don't know what they cause, but nor does anybody else. And I don't stand up here saying I'm an expert in osteoporosis. I am not. But I am a really good reader, and I'm a really good simple thinker. So I can take the information and give it back to you. Now it's up to you to get that information, more information, and figure out what you want to do with that information. You figure out what's right for you. Just figure out what's right for you, but get the facts first. And in order to get the facts, you have to go from different places. You go to your physician. You go to somebody like me who thinks so differently and thinks from the outside in kind of thing. And then you make your decision about what you're going to do. But know that your choice has consequences. I don't know what those consequences are. But remember that they are your choices. Take responsibility. Don't give that power to somebody else, and make the choices that are right for you. So let's pass that around. You can take a look at that. Okay, let's look at this. This is literally an excerpt from my book, and it's answering your osteoporosis questions. The thing about the book is that we have found, Carrie and I, and we work in Pants Party, which is a weight loss support group. We do that together. What we have found that we refer to the book over and over and over and over and over again because it's like a textbook. It gives you really simple answers. And so I suggest if you don't have a book, get a book. You need the tools. If you really want to make changes, you need the tools. And that's one of a simple, inexpensive tool you can use. So let's go over these questions literally. How big a problem is osteoporosis in the United States? 55% of all Americans, half of you, will get osteoporosis, at least, and know that you have it. A lot of us have it, but don't know we have it. 1 in 2 women and 1 in 4 men over the age of 50 will suffer from a osteoporosis-related fracture. What's the problem with those fractures? 24% die from a hip fracture within a year. That means if you get a hip fracture when you have osteoporosis, when you're at a certain age, 25% of those people die from getting a fracture. I think that's significant. 20% of the adults admitted to nursing homes because of hip fractures never get out. So it's a serious condition, but I don't think we have as much respect for it as we should. 6 months after a hip fracture, only 15% of hip fracture patients can walk across the room without help. So see how it not only is dangerous to our life, but it also affects what? Our quality of living. And when it comes to our quality of living, I have to emphasize, and I try to emphasize this every time, it's not just about you. It's about your children and your parents and your friends and your colleagues and your workmates and how we affect everybody else and how those people affect everybody else. So you see, it's not just about you. Your health affects everybody around you. It's the ripple effect. So if you can't get up the motivation for yourself to make changes, then you know what? Do it for other people. Because women, we're really good at doing it for other people. And when I stand up here and talk about osteoporosis, you could substitute any disease you want. Chronic degenerative disease, type 2 diabetes, cancer, heart disease, digestive problems, gallbladder problems, myofasciitis, any one you want to substitute in there. We might be talking about osteoporosis, but it's what we eat and our lifestyle habits and our exercise that causes, or not, that causes the consequences. It doesn't matter what you call it. So, 1 in 5 women, 1 in 5 women experience spinal fracture due to osteoporosis. I happen to also be a chiropractor. And if you've never seen somebody or if you've never had it yourself, it's extraordinarily painful and debilitating to have a spinal fracture. So how does that affect your life? And once you have a spinal fracture, it never goes away. Doesn't mean that pain can get better, But the fracture itself, with the vertebra pancakes on itself, never goes away. So that means our lives are compromised from the beginning. And I'll pass this around too, and it kind of gives you a little example. These are the vertebrae stacked on each other. Here's a disc. Those are the cushions between the vertebrae here. And then here it shows what happens. The vertebra literally goes from this big to this big, and any varying sizes in between. And this never goes away. It can feel better, and indeed the pain does get better in most cases, but sometimes not. And sometimes that can happen spontaneously. In other words, it just happens without a trauma, which is pretty scary. Let me pass that around. You can take a look at that. Do the countries, question, so at the bottom of page 1, do the countries that consume the most dairy products have the least amount of osteoporosis and fracture? The answer is no. It just so happens that England and Finland and the United States and New Zealand and Sweden, they have the highest number of, in the US, did I say that? They have the highest number of fractures in the world, and they consume the most dairy products. I don't know. I think that's something to look at. Let's go to the next one. The Food Revolution, I have these two books with me. The Food Revolution, the China study, that's right at the top of that page there, has talked about this quite in depth. So it's not just from me making things up. Here's one, The Food Revolution by John Robbins. He talks quite a bit about that. And then the China study, this is excellent. They're both excellent. The China study by Dr. T. Colin Campbell. This also talks about osteoporosis, and that fact that I just mentioned, that just so happens the countries that eat the most dairy products have the most osteoporosis. Look at us. Oh my gosh, look at us. And we're such a good example of what not to eat. So that next question, I thought dairy milk was supposed to build strong bones and teeth. I thought dairy was supposed to build strong bones and teeth. Yes, and we all thought that, and most of us still do. Do the research and answer your own question. They're your bones we're talking about, and I implore you, do that. Do the research yourself. But let's go over some of the research so that you just know it's substantiated. The first bullet, there's virtually no evidence that drinking 2 or 3 glasses of milk a day reduces the chances of breaking a bone. And you can see who the authors are. A large 12-year study of 78,000 nurses sponsored by Harvard, this is a fairly recent study in the last few years, found no evidence that drinking more milk reduced osteoporosis or bone fracture. In fact, women who drank 2 or 3 glasses of milk a day suffered more fractures. A study on postmenopausal women. I think I have it here. Yeah, here it is. So postmenopausal, after menopause, published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, which was sponsored by the dairy industry because they wanted to prove once and for all that milk and dairy products was excellent for good bone health. Well, they didn't prove that, and they have not had a study since, to my knowledge. So they found out that the women who drank 14 milligrams per day of skim milk, 3 8-ounce glasses, lost significantly more bone mass than non-milk drinking women. I don't know. You know, you have to be careful about statistics because it's not always what you see is what you get, as we all know who have looked at statistics, but it's still something to look at. This study was funded by the dairy industry. In 2005, the Harvard School of Public Health researched all studies regarding the consumption of milk and its byproducts. It found no evidence supporting the notion that dairy products prevented osteoporosis, much less 3 glasses of milk a day. It did find, however, if you have a pen, you can highlight that. This is the 4th bullet down, it did find, however, that those 3 glasses of low-fat milk contributed to overweight and obesity problems, and dairy products were linked to increased risk of ovarian and prostate cancer. Something to look at. Furthermore, due to lactose intolerance, millions of Americans couldn't eat even a little dairy without symptoms of stomach aches, gas, or other digestive problems. Here's another one, an MD who reviewed over 500 articles published in the scientific medical literature regarding milk. As he said, they were only slightly less than horrifying. Do we ever hear that on the news? You see? We have to be responsible for ourselves. And so when you hear something on the news, just start filtering through your brain and say, does that make sense? Does that really make sense that we should be drinking milk from another mammals? And as an adult at that. Does that make sense? None of the authors spoke of cow's milk as an excellent food free of side effects. The main focus of the published reports seemed to be intestinal colic, intestinal irritation, intestinal bleeding, anemia, allergic reactions in infants and children, as well as infections such as salmonella, fear of viral infections with bovine leukemia virus or an AIDS-like virus. I remember when my daughter, who's in the back of the room, she loves it when I do this. Erin, who's been working in my office right now because Katie's been gone. Thank you, Erin. She read my manuscript, and she read it on milk, and she calls me up, and she goes, Mom, why did you tell me that milk had pus in it? I didn't say anything. Do you think it would have done any good at the wrong time? Probably not. But she has very little dairy at this point. She's not 100%, but she almost is. Okay, let's go to the next page, page 3. If dairy products are not so the point is this. If dairy products are not ideal, what's ideal? So look up at me, and then you can look down at this for just a minute, because the answer's right there. But I'm going to help you walk you through it in your brain first. Where does calcium originally come from? Yeah, you guys are so smart. It comes from the ground. Calcium comes from the soil. The calcium from the soil is inorganic, which is not as opposed to being organic. That means it's indigestible, unusable for human and animal consumption. So calcium originally comes from the ground. And then what makes calcium into something that's edible and usable for human beings? Plants. Isn't that amazing how we're made and the universe made everything to all go together, way smarter than us? It's the plants. And then the cows eat the plants. And somehow along the line, we thought that eating a product from the cows was better for us than eating the plants that provide enough calcium and perfect source of calcium to get enough calcium. That's the logic, and that's written down for you. So you can take this home now and look at it if you can't quite remember that. According to John Robbins in the Food Revolution, a survey conducted on diet and hip fractures in 33 countries found an absolutely phenomenal correlation between eating plant foods and bone strength. Plant foods and bone strength. So what's really the message here? The message is eating dairy products and drinking milk is a choice. It's not a necessity. We are free to make our own choice now. So you make your own choice and feel good about it. And, you know, sometimes we can't, I counted up the number of days, which is a phenomenal amount of days, because it took me, I can't quite remember, but it's in the book, like 7 years after I became aware of dairy products and knew that I needed not to eat them, because especially me, that I was so allergic to dairy products. It took me about 7 years to finally stop doing dairy products. I'm not proud of that, but it's just part of the human process. Remember, it's about progress, not perfection. So you may know some things now, but you might find it hard to incorporate these principles into your life. That's okay. Don't be discouraged with yourself. It just takes time to do that, because our conditioning, we're so deeply grooved, and we are emotionally and physically attached to the foods that we ate since our mothers gave them to us the time when we were really little. And that conditioning is really difficult to jump out of. Colin Campbell, T. Colin Campbell, which is this book here. This is such a good book. It's a little bit harder to read than mine, to say the least. He's a scientist. I'm a cheerleader. So my stuff is a little bit easier, but I use him a lot as a reference book because he's so good. He compared the contents of animal food combination to a comparable plant food combination. I want you to take out your other handout. It's in there. I'm getting more organized, aren't I, Anne? Are you proud of me? Yeah. I know. So let's go to what I think it's. What, Is it chartreuse green, she thinks. You'll have the,
Protein,
what'd you say?
protein and bone loss.
No, it's a chart. Chart. I had it marked, but I changed. Oh, there it is. It's the green one, chartreuse green. That's what Ann said. The chartreuse green one. She's so smart. Okay, open that up. And because this is going to, you know, it doesn't really matter if other people agree with what you do. It doesn't, listen to me, class. We have to discipline some of you. It doesn't matter what other people think of you and what you're doing. What matters is what you think. And so when you need reinforcement because you don't quite get it, because you haven't studied it for years and years and years, go back to your tools. Like go back to this book, go back to this chart, go back to my book, go back to the dairy chapter, go back to the workbook that I have, because it's all in there in very simple, laid out terms. And I almost can guarantee you that you're going to say, this makes sense. I understand this. So then when people come at you and situations come at you and circumstances come at you, you can be rock solid in what you want to do for yourself. And that doesn't mean we should be preachy or judgmental or have expectations of other people, including our spouses or our children or our parents. But it does mean you can be rock solid in yourself and make those decisions based on facts now, not just what we and the American culture has drilled into our brains since the time we were really little. So for you to even be here is a phenomenal kind of thing for me, because that means you're already thinking different than other people. Did you ever think you're different? Anybody? Does anybody ever think you're different? Yeah. Do you ever think you're different than other people?
Oh, yeah.
Bill? Bill's really different than other people. And this is one of my little sayings, and you've probably heard me say it before if you've heard me before. You've got to be different to make a difference. Whether it be in your life or other people's lives around you, you've got to be different to make a difference. If you're not different, if you're like everybody else, you sort of fade into the masses, the faceless masses. Who wants to do that? We want to be different, and enough, maybe you don't want to shake up the world, but at least make those decisions that are right for you based on the facts. If sometimes you decide to wiggle, if you haven't been here before, you don't know what it is, but what does wiggle mean? Wiggle room. So if sometimes you decide to wiggle, you know full well what you're doing, is that okay? Of course that's okay. But just know what you're choosing. So on this, and then in this book on page 230, you have it on your shirt, choose that little chart. This is one of the best charts I have found in all the reading that I've done. I've been doing reading about this for years. He compares equal parts of plant foods to equal parts animal foods. And look at what he comes up with. Well, of course, cholesterol, there's none in plant foods. That's pretty telling. But animal-based foods, there's 137 milligrams. And then there's the fat compared to the 36 in animal foods. And then the protein, look at the protein, because people have so much trouble with not getting enough protein. Oh my gosh. Someday I wish someone would come up to me and say, you know, Leslie, I'm really worried about getting too much protein. Tell me how I'm getting too much protein. We're so absolutely obsessed with the protein, probably more than the calcium. So the protein, look at that. 33 grams of protein in the plant-based foods, 34 grams of protein in the animal foods. There's your answer right there. And then it goes through the fiber. Of course, there's none in the animal foods. Vitamin C, of course, very little in animal foods. The folate acid is 11, over 1,000 milligrams in the plant foods, 19 in the animal foods. Then you have the vitamin E is higher. The iron, because people think you get more iron in meat. That is another myth. So the iron, you get 20 milligrams of iron in the plant-based foods. You get 2 in the animal foods. Do you see the difference in nutrition? And the difference in nutrition without getting the fat and the cholesterol and the protein itself. The protein itself, without the fat and the cholesterol, is correlated with what? With breast cancer and heart disease and other things too. Just the protein. But, oh, I know. I skipped a couple of these. Thank you, Sheila. But let's go down to the calcium, because that's what we're talking about now. Look at the calcium. The plant-based food, 545 milligrams of calcium in plants. Wow. God is pretty smart, don't you think? Human beings, especially Americans, are not so smart because we're conditioned a certain way. And the calcium in the animal-based foods, which includes whole milk, 252 milligrams of calcium. So when in doubt, look at some of the facts and look at some of the information. Here it is right here. Okay, let's go down to the next question. So exactly, because the next logical question is what? Well, how much calcium is in plants? You know, in my mind, honestly, I don't care. I'm so bad at retaining numbers. I even have a cheat sheet this time because I'm so bad at it. But the bottom line is, if you know the big concept, this is called deductive reasoning. You know what deductive reasoning is? Like years and years ago, they used to think the world was flat, right? So there's a major premise. The major premise is what? That the world was flat. And everybody thought the world was flat, and the maps and charts were made according to that, and plans and journeys and trips were made according to that concept, because that was the accepted norm, that the world was flat. And then, aha, someone went around the world, or not around the world, but partly, and discovered what? They didn't drop off. So the major premise was wrong, wasn't it? And so the major premise had to shift. So this is deductive reasoning, and then if the major premise is correct, then you can deduce facts from the major premise. I was not planning on going into that at all today, but because we're so icky about the numbers, we have to know the numbers. Like, it makes any difference. Do you think people are going to change if they know the numbers? No. But think of the major concept. The major concept is what? Plants are the most efficient way of getting our calcium without the cholesterol and the fat. So do you think we have to know how much is in every little itty-bitty plant to know if we're getting enough calcium? Not in my brain, but if your brain, you do, then here are some numbers right here. And these, look at broccoli. A cup of broccoli is 62 milligrams of calcium. Sweet potato, 76 milligrams. Romaine lettuce, 20 milligrams. Kale, 94 milligrams. Green beans, 28. One navel orange. One orange is 60 milligrams. The question is, what? What's the next logical question? How many milligrams do we actually need? Well, the government says now, for some reason they've raised it, the government now says we need 1,000 to 1,500 milligrams of calcium. Like that's done anything to really prevent the osteoporosis that we have that's so rampant in this country. They just sort of, I don't know how they came up with that, but they have in the last few years. Before it was lower. The World Health Organization, however, says we only need 500 milligrams. According to the studies, and it's in your handout, according to the studies, there's a lot of evidence saying that we really only need 200 to 250 milligrams of calcium. If an orange is 60 milligrams of calcium, we're certainly getting plenty of calcium, aren't we? We certainly are. So unless you're a drug addict or you're starving on the street somewhere in America, the issue is not getting enough calcium. The issue is, what are Americans consuming that's leaching the calcium from their bodies? And what have we been consuming since we were babies? When our mothers gave us Gerber meat stuff out of a little jar. You know that stuff? Yeah, think about it. So there you go. Anyway, here's that, and it's in this book. I have it in a lot of different books, but this is a really good reference. It talks about how much calcium is in all the foods. Almonds is high in calcium, by the way. Beans are high in calcium, like kidney beans and black beans and lentils, flaxseed. Some people grind up flaxseed in the drink in the morning. That has a lot of calcium in it. Sunflower seeds. Okay, next question. Do I have to consciously eat certain plant foods to make sure I get all my calcium? The answer for me is no. I just know that I'm eating the best food, the foods that grow from the ground and grow from the trees. And someone else knows a lot more than me as far as how everything works together in order for me to get what I need. So how much calcium do I need a day? Here it is right here. The World Health Organization says you need 400 to 500 milligrams a day. The U.S. government now says it's 1,000 to 1,500 milligrams. It's impossible to figure out where that overinflated figure came from unless the dairy and calcium people had a say, which they probably did. You know, they're powerful, powerful groups, you know, that work behind the scenes. This, at the top, I want you to star this. It's at the top of page 4. And I have it bolded. Top of page 4. This is what has come out in a lot of the studies and research. No matter how much calcium we take in through our foods and tablets, we can only absorb about 500 milligrams of calcium anyway. So what's the point of getting 1,000 or 1,500 milligrams? You know what the point is? Calcium tablets. Calcium tablets. And you know, I talked to the man, this is several years ago, who his job was to go into people's septic systems and clean them out. I know it's hard to believe that people do that for a living, but they do, and some of us has to do it, you know, so you're eternally grateful for them. But the man I was talking to said, do you know how many supplements and calcium tablets that come through into the septic tanks? Because I think a lot of times it's indigestible. And that's not the first time I've heard that. I've heard it a lot. But it's a quick fix, easy fix. The doctors can buy into it, that we can buy into it. We can pay some money, and then we think we're getting all the calcium we need, and then we don't have to take responsibility for what we eat. Everybody's happy. Until our vertebra goes, and you're in horrendous pain. Or until you lose your hip, you fall, and you break a hip joint, and you could lose your life for that. So we need to open our eyes and our awareness. Do I get osteoporosis from not getting enough calcium? No. What are the critical years for determining whether I get osteoporosis? I already told you that. 30s, in the 30s for women, 40s for men. The stage is set. What are the biggest calcium thieves that steal calcium from your bones? Yeah, this is when we start getting squirmy here. I'm sure no one does any of these things. And it doesn't have anything to do with any other diseases that we get, does it? No. Well, let's look at the calcium robbers. So these are the substances that we take in that steal calcium from our bones. Caffeine? I'm sure that doesn't bother anybody. I'm sure. Sugar? I'm sure that doesn't bother anybody. Salt, soft drinks, alcohol, smoking, and certain drugs. Antibiotics, chemotherapy, antacids. I was in the locker room, this was probably 2 years ago now, and you know, in the locker room at SARC, you know, they have lockers, and then there's people over there on the other side of the lockers that are talking that I can't hear, but I know who they are because we know everybody's voices in the locker room because we've been all going there for years and years and years. So I hear these two women yakking back and forth about Tums. And it really was like a commercial. No, it was like Saturday Night Live. And I'm getting dressed, you know, not having no clothes. I had no clothes on, so I didn't exactly want to barge in on their conversation. And one of the women was saying, what? You know, I went to my doctor, and I have osteopenia and osteoporosis, and my doctor told me to take Tums. Oh, that's what my doctor told me to take too. I should take Tums. I know, because I'm taking Tums now because my doctor told me to, because it has calcium in it. That's what they were yakking about back and forth. It sounded like a skit and a commercial. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh. I mean, they're living it, breathing it, acting it. They were told by their doctor. Did they ever think once about if it's true or not? No, because we think our doctors know every little thing, even though it's our bodies, and we're the ones that are going to end up with osteoporosis because we thought we were getting our calcium because we're getting an antacids. Do you know that antacids leach calcium from your bones? Do you think they can add a chemical in order to make up for the antacid action, what happens in your bones because it leaches calcium from your bones? Do you think those physicians who told those women that, and I'm not saying all physicians are like that, do you think they had any idea? Absolutely not. So our physicians are really good at what they do, but that doesn't mean they know everything, and that doesn't mean they know anything or everything about what? Health. Nutrition. health, about nutrition and food. So we have to be our best doctors, and I can cheer you on. So here are the calcium robbers right here. What's the biggest one of all? It's not here. What's the biggest one of all? Meat. Animal products. Animal products leach the calcium from your bones. Isn't that a great graphic? We have PowerPoints now. 5 minutes. Thank you. We have PowerPoints now. We have all these little graphics on the PowerPoints, and they just are outstanding. It's the animal protein. Why? So there's the animal protein. Here it is. And the calcium robbers. Why do these things leach calcium from your bones? Does anybody have any idea?
It's the acid producing.
Exactly. Because these produce an acid environment in our bodies. You hear that, Charlie? Can you hear me? Okay. These produce an acid environment within our body. The animal protein does the same thing. Now, if you remember chemistry, I know we try to forget it, but if you remember chemistry, an acid environment in the body is bad for the body. Cancer thrives in an acid environment. So we want our bodies to be alkaline. And so there are certain substances that we take in that make our environment in our body acidic. Here they are. Grains do the same thing, by the way. They make our body acidic, including good grains do the same thing. Because when our body is acidic, our body says, oh, my body's acidic, I need to be more alkaline. In order to get more alkaline, to neutralize the acid, what neutralizes an acid? A base. A base. So therefore, the body takes the calcium out of the bones into the bloodstream to make your bodies more alkaline, and excuse my language, but then we just pee it out. So what does that mean? That means, oh my goodness, we really are getting enough calcium. Even if you're not thinking about it, we're truly getting enough calcium. But what are we taking into our bodies day after day, year after year after year that leaches the bone, that dissolves our bones? And so by the time they do a T scan, sound familiar? By the time they do a T scan on your bones, you've already had it for years and years and years and years, but they haven't been able to pick it up. This is an interesting thing. Where's the, do I have it back? Where's the bone? Oh. Where's your mustache? She's pretty handy. Oh, yes, there we are, the mustache. Now, this is Dr. Dougal's the one who, I knew this, but he really taught it to me, and we have, if you want those osteoporosis audio tapes, you can get it from us at the end. They're $10 each, but he's on that one. He and I both teach that one. Those tests, the density bone tests that you take, what they are measuring is the weight of the bone. So what they're measuring is the weight of the bone. They're not measuring the bone strength. There's only one very, very, very expensive, sophisticated machine that I've never seen anywhere around here that measures bone strength. The issue in osteoporosis is not this. The issue is we want these fibers to be as strong as possible. You see? Like the Tacoma Narrows Bridge. Think about the bridge. And the bridge has so much weight to it. Just because it has so much weight to it doesn't mean that it's a healthy structure, does it? The same with our bones. Just because our bones have so much weight to it doesn't mean that our bones are healthy. And just because our bones don't have as much weight doesn't mean that our bones are more brittle. Because this is what you can do about it right now. You can exercise. You can exercise and use food, so you're not leaching any more calcium from your bones, and use food to control and fight osteoporosis. And it's Dr. Dougal in Paulsbo, who I've worked with a lot with, who's a diabetic specialist and internist and knows he has credentials up the yin-yang, and he knows this stuff inside and out. He says this. First of all, those T-scores are compared to people in their 20s. You cannot compare us to people in our 20s, in their 20s, number one. Number two, there's no evidence, there's no clinical studies that say drugs do anything to help osteopenia. Osteopenia is that step before osteoporosis, if you've seen those tests. Osteopenia. Because the doctors use that as a barometer, and a lot of doctors will put their patients on whatever they put them on, a drug or calcium tablets or whatever. When people have osteopenia, Dr. Dougal says it's way too premature. He says the only time that a drug should be used is if you've had a fracture that was caused by osteoporosis. Isn't that interesting? You know why? He says because we don't know the long-term effects. We don't know the long-term effects. But we do know that drugs have long-term effects. So if you're a 50-year-old woman or a 60-year-old woman or even a 70-year-old woman who's never had a fracture due to osteoporosis, and they put you on this drug, what happens to your bones in 20 years after being on this drug for 20 years? That's what we need to think about. Where do we want to be in 10 and 20 years? Why don't we take control now and do what we need to do to build up the bones? And how do we build up the bones? We have to eat correctly so we're not leaching more calcium from the bones and making our bones holier, and we have to exercise. And they have proven time after time after time after time that what exercise does is increase the strength in your bones and your bone health. It doesn't increase much the bone density because I swear, once your bones have holes, they got holes. And as far as the drugs maybe increase bone density is not bone health, by 1 and at the most 7%. A lot of times 1% difference, at the most 7%, and then sometimes you start taking these drugs, what happens? You lose anything that little that you've gained. He says diet and exercise are the key, absolutely key. And we know that, don't we? We really do know that in our guts. We're going to wrap up soon because I've talked too much like I always do. So we see that. Go to the next page. So what can you do to build up your bones? So when you go home tonight or tomorrow, just take a look at these before you lose them. What can I do to build up my bones? Weight-bearing exercise like walking. Vitamin D, they're finding out, is very important. If we don't get enough from our sun, then take it in a supplement form. That's important in order to build up our bones. And also eating correctly here. As reported in the journal, how much walking should I do to improve my bone health? Because people, a lot of times, we think we have to walk an hour a day because I always advocate that. We really do need to walk an hour a day. We need to exercise an hour a day. We should not take a day off. We should not ever take a day off from our bodies. Our bodies are important. We need to take care of our bodies every day. So I say walk an hour a day, but you know what? You might not be at that place. So what you do is figure out where you are and go to the next level, even if it's 10 minutes before dinner. Walk for 10 minutes. So you don't have to necessarily, and if you can't walk, do something else. And weight-bearing exercise like, thank you, Pamela Jane. You know, you can weights, but I think walking is just fine. But as reported in the Journal of American Medical Association, this is top of page 5, collected from 61,000 women, show that if you walk just 4 hours a week, think about that. 4 hours a week? Think about it. It's nothing. Then your risk of hip fracture is reduced by 40%. Your risk factor of hip fracture by just walking 4 hours a week is reduced by 40%. So, you know, really, sometimes we just don't have to do as much as we think we have to do because it becomes really overwhelming. So just even if you do a little bit, it makes a difference. And it doesn't just make a difference in your bone health. It makes a difference whether or not you get cancer. It makes a difference whether or not you get heart disease. It makes a difference whether you're going to have a sudden heart attack, your first symptom being death. So it makes, just little things make a difference. So let's just start saying, okay, where am I? I need to be way over there, but I'm not there yet. How can I transition to that level? And we're going to look at this. So prevention of osteoporosis. We're going to wind it up. Avoid animal protein. That's a biggie. Avoid animal protein. Avoid the calcium robbers. The calcium robbers are in your handout, so you can look at that. Eat 10 fresh fruits a day.
That's not that
10, it sounds like a lot. This woman who I took care of for years and years and years, and she has now passed away not too long ago, but her name was Esther, and she said to me, she said, Leslie, what should I eat? Because she wanted to lose weight. And I told her what to eat in a day to eat 10 fresh fruits. And she said, but Dr. Leslie, if I eat 10 fruits a day, I'm not going to have room for anything else. I go, that's the point, Esther. That is the point, you see? Because if we're not eating all the other foods, we have plenty of room for fruits and vegetables, and way more than 10, actually. So 10 fresh fruits a day, and in my plan in the book, I talk about that. 10 fresh vegetables a day, that's even easier, I find, to get than the fruit. Not for me, but for other people. Because you can have 10 different vegetables in your salad. You got 10 vegetables. Bingo. And then you have the rest, let's say you had that for lunch, and then you have the rest of the day to have more vegetables and more fruit. Can you imagine? If you have just fruit in the morning, I can easily have 10 fruits in the morning. Most of my people can't. They're too full. Can you imagine being too full and losing weight? Whoa, what a concept, being too full and losing weight. But if they had the fruit, like say they have 4 or 5 whole fruits in the morning, and then they have a big salad for lunch that has 10 different vegetables, you've already gotten 4 fresh fruits or 5 fresh fruits, and you've already gotten the vegetables. You've got more fresh fruit in you by noon than most people get in 2 weeks. You're going to be the champs. The champs. So also weight-bearing exercise every day, and of course I put an hour because that's ideal. Then my eating plan is called 10% for life, which I explain, and this is what you do. You think addition, not subtraction. So don't think about giving anything up. What you do is think about what you're going to add to your day. You wake up in the morning and say, oh, I get to add fruit in the morning. Oh, I get to add a salad. Oh, I get to add. What do you get to add instead of what do you going to give up? If you add the best foods for you first, then you know what happens? You get full. And then you don't want to eat all the bad stuff. If you want to have dessert, how about saying, okay, I am allowed to have that dessert, but I'm going to have fruit first. Who knows? You might decide not to have the dessert because you had the fruit first. So you eat the best food for you first. These are the best foods for you. And those are all laid out really well also in the book. In the end, don't make it too complicated. You see what happens? As soon as we make things too complicated, then what do? We go, oh, I can't do that. Or that woman's just crazy. I've heard that a lot. No, I can't do that. And you're laughing way too hard at that one. Way too hard. But where do cows get their calcium? I mean, think about it. Yeah, they get it from the ground. They get it from the grass. You know what? We're lucky. We don't have to eat just grass. We get all the fruits and vegetables, and there's so many fruits and vegetables, different variety out there, choices. I heard someone grumbling this morning. Are they there? Maybe not here. Maybe hope not. This morning about, oh, but I can't get a fruit in the winter. I go, where do you live? Do you live at the North Pole? Do you live in Antarctica? You can't get the fruit in the winter? I live here. Well, why don't you go down to Safeway? You go down to Sunny Farms. I guarantee you can get plenty of fruit and plenty of vegetables all year long. In some places it's not as good, but I guarantee you in this place we get excellent, excellent produce. So I'm not going to listen to, oh, they don't have nectarines in the winter. And no, this was, oh, they don't have cantaloupe in the winter. So, you see how spoiled we are? We're brats, aren't we? We're all like that. We're all brats. Oh, one more thing. Oh, this is Braun Smith. This is a self-portrait. He's the one who made all my. I have I think 200 posters or something. It's cute. But this is, you know what this could be tonight? This could be a pivotal moment. A pivotal moment. So what's a pivotal moment? Think about the major pivotal moments in your life. What are the major pivotal moments in your life that puts you here right now? Think about it. What are the major pivotal moments? Jolie and Georgia brought family. I mean, who would have thunk it? They spend time on their vacation here with all of us. How privileged are we? But they're major pivotal moments in our life that put us exactly where we're supposed to be. And so all of us are exactly where we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be here. Now take advantage of the information and start making changes, gradual changes. You know what the best part is? The best part is finally taking control of yourselves. That's an amazing, empowering kind of a thing. So it's not just about the food. It becomes, wow, I can do this. I can take control over what I'm eating. It is no longer controlling me. I am no longer trapped by the food that my mother, God bless her, my mother taught me to eat. But I am truly making my own choices. I'm taking responsibility for my own body. And by golly, you feel better about yourself than you have in your whole life. It doesn't mean that you've necessarily lost weight, although as you eat better and better and better, you absolutely lose weight. When someone comes into me and they haven't lost the weight, it's kind of telltale. It's kind of hard to shuffle around, but when you really are taking responsibility and making the right choices for yourself, it's amazing empowerment. And it doesn't matter if you go to Aunt Mary's house and she doesn't agree with what you're doing. Or if she doesn't have food for you, who cares? We don't even have to talk to her about it, do we? It doesn't matter what our spouse is doing any longer, women, because we love to blame our spouses for not making the changes we needed to make. We love that. Oh, but my husband eats meat. Well, what do you eat? Probably the same thing. So we need to stop these excuses and really take control, because that's when we really, when we align our lives with our clear intentions about ourselves, with our soul's purpose. When we align our lives with what we know is right for us, there is nothing more euphoric and there's nothing more empowering than doing that. So I suggest you make the right choices. And I'll end with this quote that happens to be mine. Actually, the whole presentation was sort of mine too. But anyway, here we are. You are the master of your own choices. You are the master of your own choices. And either the beneficiary of or the slave to the consequences. So you are the master of your own choices. You're either the beneficiary of or the slave to the consequences. I want to thank you for coming. I so appreciate you being here.